Hey, this is Amy with Creative Catapult Coaching,
And Megan with Focus Like a Mother and Change HP.
and this is the Control Alt Think podcast conversations with neurodivergent minds. And we started today with what are we talking about? But kind of going with getting things done and recognizing overwhelm and just different ways we approach it.
Yes. And it feels like there are so many never-ending tasks to do that overwhelm is always creeping in.
Well, and for me, I've started to realize that, I don't always recognize when I'm getting overwhelmed until I'm kind of like so overwhelmed that something shuts me down for half a day. Um, and I'm better at recognizing it than I used to be, but I'm now kind of going, okay, so how do I recognize the physical signs, not just the mental signs earlier?
Hmm. What does overwhelm end up looking like for you?
Um, there have been times where it's kind of like a panicked focus. But for me, it's just I liked one of the old definitions from one of my coaching programs is like overwhelm is anytime that you don't feel like you've got the resources to deal with the demands of you.
Hmm.
And the I think for me, some of it's habit. I expect to be overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And so I don't always stop and evaluate, do I actually have the resources or the capacity? And sometimes there's more than I think there is, but I just kind of operate in a state of like not clear thinking because there's always more to do and it's been overwhelming for so long.
Hmm.
That doesn't really tell you what it looks like, but it's more of a feeling.
Yeah. I think for me, I end up shutting down. Um,
There
so
is
it's
too.
it's it's kind of like there's too many things and I don't have the ability or the things I need to do the too many things, and then I just can't figure out where to go from there.
There is definitely that version too, and I'm that's much further down my list. I've been playing around with interoception and so really noticing what I'm feeling. And yesterday I was kind of going, oh, my eyebrows feel, I'm not sure what my eyebrows feel, but they feel something. And like
Hmm.
this, or my eyes, or, my lips, or different parts of my body. And it was like the feeling, this low grade vibrating stress just kind of went away. It was kind of
Hmm.
It was kind of cool, but I'm like, oh, so if I can get to the point where I start recognizing the emotional overwhelm, I always have more things on my to-do list than I can humanly get through. Some of them being should, some of them being things I actually want.
It's interesting, the emotional overwhelm piece, because I feel like that one is harder to parse out than the actual physical overwhelm of look at this massive list of stuff I have to do versus the overwhelm of I'm dysregulated, but I don't know why. Or for me, I don't even realize that I'm getting
Yeah.
dysregulated until I'm like, oh, yeah, this is not good. I
Until it's
like,
reached a fevered pitch and your whole body and brain are screaming at you, or
yeah,
you shut down to the point and you suddenly go, oh, now that I've shut down, I can see I'm overwhelmed.
yeah. It's like,
Because I'm
oh, let's
real
back that
familiar with
up so
that.
that we can do something before we get there.
Right. And so this is, I think, part of why I'm really interested in interoception right now is, as you recognize your body states more consciously or can parse them faster, you actually know what you need. And shockingly, this helps with emotional management and emotional regulation, which are both challenging with ADHD.
Hmm. When it's interesting because a lot of times I will explain current state of owning my own business and working for myself is a different, I guess I could call it a different sense of overwhelm. I approach overwhelm differently. Like I get overwhelmed differently than when I worked in the corporate kind of world. And I'm not sure what I went from that feeling of kind of constant stress to where now I actually know what it feels like to not be super stressed all the time. Like I
Uh-huh.
know what it feels like to be able to go to sleep and not have to worry about, oh my gosh, I have all these things I have to get done and I haven't gotten them done. It doesn't happen all the time, but I at least know what that feeling is like now. Um, so I'm like trying to think through overwhelm now for me is a different experience than it used to be. And I can't really put my finger on what's different about it, but I think I was so overwhelmed constantly before that I didn't even know um like the different levels.
Yeah, one
Whereas
is
now I think I'm a little
interesting.
more aware.
Well, and I think what for me is part of the difference right now too is that um owning my own business, I have to set all the structure and all the goals and all the achievements other than like meeting with clients. When I worked for somewhere else, yeah, there were still decisions, but I could function in a higher state of overwhelm because I didn't have to make them. It was like there was somebody had already laid out the goals and the objectives. You know,
Mm,
get your framework in, get your class schedule put together by this date because it's got to go through the proofing process. So it was like there were deadlines that, there was some flexibility to some of them, but, they weren't set by me. It wasn't all me making the decisions. So I
mm,
almost have to be more aware of my overwhelm and my emotional management. Otherwise, nothing gets done now because
mm,
I have to have the ability to initiate, which actually requires, I'm realizing, a huge amount of emotional awareness and regulation when there's no urgency and I can push the deadline out for myself.
mm. It's interesting. It sounds like a lot more independent task management now versus having someone else help with task management before. And from my side, there is that piece. Um, but there's also the control piece. So working inside of an organization, you have less control. Whereas working for yourself, you have more control, but also more, you have to come up with everything yourself.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's just more to do. But we had also mentioned overwhelm and where we, so you mentioned externalizing is helpful,
Right.
right? Because someone else helping set goals. And before we jumped on our call, we also talked about automating and not only being able to tell when we're overwhelmed, but how to prevent it or how to manage it. And automating was one of the things I mentioned I'm trying to figure out.
Automation is a cool thing. What kinds of things are you automating?
Notes is one of them. So I've been playing with can I have, so Zoom AI has a very cool auto summary feature now. And so it'll automatically dump it into my Notion notebook so that I don't have to take detailed notes every time I'm the host,
Hmm.
necessarily. So then I can actually focus more on what's happening on a call versus trying to get my notes. Um, so I'm still working on figuring out how I want to do that, but automating other things where I don't have to make decisions just in daily
Daily.
life.
Yeah.
Like
One of the,
like I always make my coffee the same way. Today I switched to a December flavor, and that was like super exciting.
yeah. So routine there for you. One of the early ones that I found really helpful was automatic transfers to an account to pay bills. I know we sort of
Mm,
hit on finances a couple weeks ago. Automating all my bills as much as humanly possible. So that I don't have to think about it, freeing up that mental energy from the low level stuff so I can focus on the more interesting
Mm-hmm.
things that, require decisions and, because routine and repetitiveness are killers for a lot of the attention with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
That's before you even add stressful stuff like money to the mix.
Yes. Yes. Automating account transfers and bill pay, or at least reminders. So I have some that'll auto pay, but then I have others that vary each month, and it's like, hey, I want to see this before I pay it or whatever. But at least automating as much as possible makes it less stressful because I don't have to worry about forgetting and then being hit with a penalty because I forgot. Not because I didn't can't pay it, but because I forgot to pay it.
Right, because you were busy doing other, probably more urgent things in the moment,
Hmm.
firefighting or whatever.
Or
Hopefully not
maybe
the role.
something more fun. Who knows? But because paying bills is never fun.
No. But other things, there's a reason that all my clients have standing appointments, the same day and time, week over week. Why the software I use needed to have a reminder feature because I do not have the bandwidth or the interest to be able to, remind those. And anyone, I always laugh when I meet with a provider or a therapist or somebody, and they're like, okay, let's schedule our next appointment now. And I'm like, oh, if I had to do this for 15 people every week, there is no way it would be happening consistently.
Mm,
Just so I need the standardization both in my schedule, but then that also helps build deadlines and some routine in as well.
hmm. Yeah, it's interesting thinking about automation on the business side. So I've got reminders set up for me. If it doesn't go on the calendar, whether it's personal or business, it's probably not happening. So I rely very heavily on some calendar systems that I've finally found what works for me, and everything is different for everyone. Um, but I have a new system this year that I can automate like contracts and invoicing and things like that.
Hmm.
That that was something super painful to do in the past. So automating helps reduce the overwhelm of tasks
Doing
that
decision
are
fatigue.
routine but not pleasant, or are just tedious.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and then the repeat nature of them. Like
And you
invoicing
mentioned
usually
one,
has to happen monthly, and you and I are both service providers, so we probably have the same number of meetings or other ways that technology can help us take the thought out of that, and the overwhelm to deal with all the other things that we find overwhelming, coupled with,
yeah,
again, executive dysfunction of having just fewer working memory slots in the first place. So it's like they get filled faster and we cycle through because we just don't hold as much information easily in our heads. So externalizing, standardizing, creating routines as much as for the things that don't need novel decisions every time.
yeah, record keeping. So I mentioned my notes, but the other one is you probably have similar where we need to keep records of our coaching hours, and
All
things
done
like
by software.
yes. So that's one that it's part of the note taking, but it also keeps a record of how long the call was and what the main topic was, so that and what the client identifier was, so that I can keep an automatic record. Whereas
Hmm.
before I was having to go into an Excel spreadsheet and type in how many minutes was this coaching session, who was it with, what was it, all
Hmm.
of that's something I've automated. When we talked about coming into this call, that you use Zapier, which I also use Zapier to connect some things, but our podcasts, we have a in theory, we're still working on the automation, but every time one gets published, Zapier will keep an automatic record of it in a spreadsheet so that we know what the topic was and that it was published and all of that. So automations don't always work flawlessly. They
And
take some
that's
work to
the
set
thing
up.
is, like most of the technology and most of the workarounds we've hit on, they're tools. They're not perfect. And there's always, hopefully in something like this, low risk, when
Hmm.
things don't work perfectly, but I don't have a full engineering department behind me. If something is super mission critical, I better have a way to deal with it when the technology doesn't work.
Hmm.
When Verizon had a multi-million user, outage for half a day earlier this year, and my cell phone didn't work. I didn't get any of the coaching call reminders. Luckily, I have them all on my calendar, but I had a couple clients who missed appointments because they relied very heavily on the automated reminders, which are not foolproof. And thinking
Hmm.
about how many times that the services had some minor issues and people get the reminder an hour after the appointment because of something, or
Hmm.
I forgot to set up the reminders when we set up the new series. Um, so
I
again,
had one, they
tools.
come in email, and I had changed my email password and not logged back in on my phone. So on the
Mhm.
computer, I would see the emails, but I wasn't getting emails on my phone, and it took me like half a day to realize I'm not getting any emails. Um, oh, well, if those reminders come in email, I didn't see them. Um, so yeah, it's automations help, but they're not perfect. You and I worked on my co call for coaching myself last week, like visual things. So not necessarily automations, but visual reminders that I could use around my house or things. So just different ways to reduce the overwhelm or simplify decision making. So, like editing our podcasts is one that I'm making a visual checklist of because I follow the same process every time, but I don't do it on an everyday basis. And it takes brain power to actually do the thing, and so then I'll get overwhelmed and avoid doing it because I don't want to have to sit and use the brain power to remember, okay, I got to open this software. Here's all the settings I got to do. But I'm doing it the same way every time. So it's not like you said, it's not a novel thing. I can't fully automate it, but what I can do is create a record somewhere that all I got to do is pull it up and make it as easy on my brain as possible. Eventually, my brain will remember what that's called in Japanese. I think it's yokaten, um, from my Lean Six Sigma Toyota Way days. But the whole premise of lean manufacturing is to make it as simple as possible for the repeatable tasks because it's disrespectful to make someone have to use brain power for those repetitive tasks. And
I
you're
love
using
that.
energy, and you can use your energy for something better, like improving the process instead.
Improving the
Um,
process, or for a lot of us, living our lives and being in the moment instead of being stressed over whatever.
mhm,
Did I reply to the email? Did I do the thing? And so by creating routines and structure, especially, when we notice that something repeatedly overwhelms us or, causes stress because we have a history of it causing stress. And funny how that associative thinking is like, if I've been stressed by this 21 times, my brain is gonna expect to be stressed on time 22,
mhm, mhm.
even
Yeah,
if I
invoicing
changed
is that
it.
one for me that in the past, invoicing always felt painful. And now I'm invoicing a totally different type of client, totally different type of whatever. But it's like, oh, this is like as much as I can automate it and not have to follow up or things like that. So that's where systems and software are super helpful from a business owner standpoint. But
Right. And, again, I think there's a lot to be said with the just the overwhelm in general. And especially for me and with the ADHD stuff, I have lower reactivity threshold in the first place. So I benefit even more from trying to get some of these pieces in place that just help my me not have to spend the emotional energy to regulate myself.
Hmm.
And I have no idea when we actually started this one, but I'm thinking that we
We are
may be
close
at
to
the
the end of
point.
our time, so that's what I had my one of my things. I have timey. Timey says we're about out of time. It won't beep because I turned that feature off,
Yeah.
but
You might show it. That's actually a kind of a cool timer. It's a visual timer, but turn it open so people can see. It's a visual countdown.
so
And
this is a time timer brand. This is the MOD time timer. So it's a little tiny, like I think it's
4x4
three
maybe.
3 or 4 inch by, it's a little square that I can sit on my desk. But my kids also, my son calls it timey. We actually now have at least three of them in our house. So they're great for kids, but they're also great on your desk.
Well, and I think too, it's another way of reducing overwhelm because somehow it helps us understand time differently. We see it disappear instead of just this abstract number, even as
Hmm.
adults. I mean, I understand intellectually what it means when there's 5 minutes left, but somehow it feels very different to see it slowly
Yeah.
disappear versus a countdown on a digital clock.
So I just kept glancing down as we were talking, and it was like, oh, it's got one minute left. Um, so this is actually something I learned about from um, the neurodivergent community here where I live. But it was probably one of the biggest game changers. So with that,
Yeah.
talking about
Well,
overwhelm and
reducing
automating and how to,
overwhelm and all the different ways that we can support ourselves and our brain to reduce overwhelm. And this is a very small sample of the vast number of things I think that we've each done. And one of those things that most of us forget, oh, things aren't working. 99% of what you're doing is working. There's always that. You've made it this far. You can continue to refine, but give yourself credit for what you're already doing.
Mhm.
And
And
in
with
addition to
that,
sounding sage, this is Amy with Creative Catapult Coaching.
and Megan with Focus Like a Mother and Change HP.
And you can find either one of us online if you want to work with us. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Stop.